ultimately represent economy. Economy is a function of earnings, and if earnings are moving in the right direction, markets are going to move higher. Are we likely to? Could we hit a pause button? Could we go here and there for next few days? It may well happen, but I think directionally, if you still think about it, in this rally, there are three things which are common. Number one, low participation, no euphoria in terms of valuations. And number three, the SIP investors again have been rewarded for their patience. So this rally belongs to what could be called as the true spirit of Rise with India. And if you believe in India, well, stay put. This is just a number which ultimately will be remembered as just a pit stop, nothing else. Just even not a dot or a comma, just a number. Ramesh Swaminathan joins us, Executive Director with Lupin. Let's say hello to him. It's been a while. I haven't interacted with him. How have you been, my friend? Long time.
Yeah, indeed, it has been a pretty long time, Nikunj.
Well, you're interacting with us at a time when, in general, the excitement is back in pharma stocks. Everybody thinks that the worst is behind pharma, the worst is behind Lupin, and अच्छे दिन आने वाले हैं.
That's absolutely true. So a lot of things are actually moving for us at this stage. We are in the process of actually launching Spiriva, a pretty big drug in America, perhaps in the next quarter, and that would certainly be a big one for us. There are, of course, a few other molecules lined up for America. So all of this will certainly move the needle insofar as that particular market is concerned. And given the fact that US is about 35% of our overall turnover, it certainly is going to make a difference.
Why has Lupin gone through this huge cyclicality and downturn, both in terms of pricing, margins, and their inability to move up the complex platform? I mean, last couple of years, Ramesh, let's be real, I look at the declared numbers and they've been tough for Lupin.
Yes, that is absolutely true. I think for starters, what was actually a 65 billion generic market, actually eroded over time to about $56 billion. In net terms, obviously, it's a little lower. And that is principally because the fact that there was a channel consolidation out there. So much for the macro picture. We are also kind of besought with, in fact, a host of problems on the, on the factory front. So 5 of our factories had in fact issues with the FDA. We got out of 2 of those, over time. 3 of those are still pending. That actually meant that a host of products that we had lined up for launch could not potentially be launched, and there's of course the COVID times also that again, put paid to hopes of, a fast, coming out of the issues that we were facing with the FDA. But things are now looking much, much better. And we look forward to, in fact, moving the top line in America. And of course, the other issue was the fact that there are a lot of inefficiencies which are kept up over time because of supply chain issues and the like. We kind of addressed those as well. A lot of those related to, FTS because of supply chain issues, get stock write-offs and the like. With idle time at the factories, we kind of downsized. We kind of invested ahead of the curve. All of this actually meant that whilst the top line was not moving, the overhead base was certainly going up. That meant that the margins were kind of shrinking. And of course, we've kind of addressed a lot of those. Still some work to do, but we are on the right lines.
Ramesh, hi, morning. I'm going to talk about Spiriva and talk about all the points that you talked about right now in greater detail. But let's pick up on the point on margins first. How is it that you intend to fix your margins, which have been on a sort of declining trajectory for a while right now? Because there's been a conscious call by you guys at Lupin to drop several low-value products from your portfolio. Is that a conscious call? And would you now, is this now going to be a conscious strategy?
Yes, that's one of those things that we were, one of those initiatives that we had taken. There are several other initiatives, of course. I spoke about a lot of those relating to the cost. Whilst we're also addressing the portfolio itself. Because of price erosion in America of a very different kind, a lot of those products turned out to be negative margin products. So we rationalized the portfolio and dropped quite a few of those. And that obviously would make an impact in some ways. that would actually mean that some of these capacities that we have built up for the future might not get utilized fully. So that is work in progress in terms of looking at the footprint in respect of that. But as I said, the most important thing that was actually plaguing us was the fact that the top line in America was not moving. So what was about $1.1 billion business about 4-5 years ago had shrunk to about $600 million, right? It is only in the last couple of quarters that has actually been moving up, closer to the 170 odd millions. So that actually was indeed the problem. The lack of, in fact, our ability to kind of bring products to the market. We, of course, were working on, in fact, a host of complex ones, essentially the inhalations portfolio. We brought in albuterol. That, again, was a clear indication of the fact that our progress on that is what it is. And we are now following up with, in fact, Spiriva. We also launched Foster in Europe. All this is clearly an indication of the fact that our respiratory portfolio is pretty, our ability to kind of launch products there is very high. In the meantime, we are also working on more complex products on the injectables front as well. That's still work in progress, and I would save it for, in fact, a later day when we actually could discuss that. It's not to state that there are no other products, that there are no other products. There is, in fact, a pretty rich pipeline, which is there for the OSD business itself. But the OSD business I just mentioned actually has, in fact, there has been a delay because of the fact that we couldn't launch it over the last couple of years, and because of the potency of some of these products have been lost. But there are still some which could potentially, gain us some business over the next few quarters.
The Spiriva approval has come in definitely ahead of the timeline as was being predicted earlier. But tell me, what could it mean in terms of incremental revenues for you, Ramesh?
It's a pretty large molecule. It's about 1.2 billion in gross terms. So after giving the normal discounts and so on, it's a lower figure. But having said that, given the fact that it is actually an exclusive product for us, limited competition, so to speak, for at least a couple of years, we do believe that we will be able to get pretty decent market shares and really move the top line.
Ramesh, so let's understand the 35% generic portfolio. That's what markets always want to know. 35% is US. How much of that portfolio, which is 35% of the total kitty, is going through pricing pressure, has gone through pricing pressure, and will see an uptick?
Okay. A large chunk of that is principally OSD. We also have, in fact, a pretty, robust pipeline and, in fact, inline products on the inhalations front. When it comes to inhalation front, the overall, the price erosion is very minimal, so to speak. Whilst the OSD business actually has seen pretty rapid decline over time, it has stabilized in recent times, more particularly in the last 2 to 3 quarters. It's, I would say, high single-digit numbers. And that's the way it's going to stay, because essentially a lot of the companies have realized that it doesn't pay to kind of have a pretty and compete with each other in that sense, and have been dropping products. We've also been doing something very similar, and because of that, I would imagine that the price erosion is going to be contained. But it really is important for us to go into to pivot to more complex products, the inhalations piece, the injectables piece. And that's where the action really is.
Is it true that in your bid to, unlock value, you may be looking at spinning off the API business?
As a progressive company, we obviously look at a lot of things, and obviously no decision has been taken on this. We're looking at it, and it's pretty early days to even comment about it. So anything that the street is speaking or the media is reporting is pure speculation at this stage.
Yeah, but just to understand, of course, as you're saying, it's very early days. If this were to potentially happen, what would be the rationale of the move?
It's difficult to conjecture at this stage. The fact is, there's a China plus one strategy in the offering when it comes to API business itself. We have the capacities, and it might make sense at some point of time. But as I said, no decision has been taken. So I would say, wait and see.
Ramesh, tell me now with Spiriva in place and your India business as well in a pretty stable position, can Lupin exit FY24 with, say, a 20% kind of EBITDA margin, given that, all the approvals come in?
You're absolutely right there. If you look at, in fact, the last 3 quarters, our EBITDA margins has been going up. It's in line with the way we actually had guided the market. We expect this trend to kind of continue. What had really happened was that the top line was not moving, and given the fact that we have products that are going to be launched in America, we have Spiriva, we have Vernicillin, we have Darunavir, which is also an exclusive product for some time. Things should certainly look up in America. So if you look at India, that's last year was a bit of an aberration because the fact that we had loss of exclusivity in certain products. So overall, while the growth was there, it looked, in fact, a little lackluster vis-a-vis the market. But believe me, it actually is doing well. And of course, given the fact that we have added about 1,000 more medical representatives, feet on the ground, this will also contribute. And of course, the rest of the geographies, if you look at the emerging markets of South Africa, Philippines, Australia, all of these are doing fairly well. Brazil is, of course, turned the corner. We've got a pipeline for Europe as well. We have Namuscla, we have Foster that we launched in mainland Europe. So all of this will certainly move the needle for us.
Now, Ramesh, I want to go back to that whole speculation which Aisha and you've discussed about API. My point is that today API is not the fat margin business for Lupin. Lupin is moving up the value chain. Historically, markets would say keep the low margin business away, keep the fat margin business separate. It makes logical sense for Lupin to perhaps separate both these businesses so that the volatility of the API business does not impact the real richness of the complex business. So logically, it makes sense.
Well, of course, we have also thought about it on similar lines. So that's one of the arguments that has been put forth. But as I said, nothing has really been decided. It's too early days to kind of decide, to even talk about it.
Ramesh, tell me, what is going to be your acquisition strategy? Because, post Gavis, one thought that it will be a conscious strategy to go for bite-sized acquisitions. But that doesn't seem to be the case.
It's not fully true, right? Because we have been looking at, in fact, bite-sized acquisitions in the recent past. So we bought into product portfolio in the Apple portfolio in India. We looked at acquisitions in Australia. We have, of course, bought things into injectable pipeline in Europe. So we are looking at it. Obviously, we are a lot more calibrated in our regression these days. We don't want to actually look at something pretty large ones like Gavis, which happened some time ago, or for that matter, Solosec. Those because essentially we also realize that the specialty certainly requires it's perhaps the way to go in the years to come. But having said that, it also calls for a very concerted effort in terms of building up skill sets, the pipeline for it, and so on. So it's going to be a lot more strategic thinking going into it. But it's not for the immediate future, so to speak. But we are looking at bite-sized acquisitions in various parts, including India. And if the proposition is compelling enough, we'll certainly look at it.
How are you planning to fix Gavis and reduce the burn in the US business?
Gavis was stymied with a host of problems, essentially because the narcotics market itself, had declined over time because of overusage in America. It was just about the time that we bought into it. But since then, we've actually been assiduously working on a pipeline for the Somerset facility. And given our emphasis on certain products like Gavilite, or for that matter, Suprep, and so on, it's done fairly well in recent times. And with, in fact, more products going to be launched from that facility, it will certainly do much better than in the recent past.
The other thing I also wanted to talk about, Ramesh, is, in July 2022, March 23, you got approvals for 5 plants. We understand that work is left to be done on at least 3 of those. Could you give us a timeline and exact status on what's happening on your new plants?
You're talking about principally, the OAI facility, OAI on Tarapur and on Mandideep, I would imagine, and of course on Pithampur, the Unit 2. We have been working on all of those. So we have actually submitted our replies back to the authorities. We do believe that it's a question of time before all of this gets removed, and it's going to be business as usual insofar as these plants are also concerned.
Okay, Ramesh, really good to have you back, and certainly hope to see much more of you going forward. Don't go in hiding again, Ramesh.
Of course not.
We want to hear your
Anytime.
views. We want to hear your views again.
Yeah, we would be available. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ramesh. Always a pleasure. Now, what do we have on the markets? Let's unlock the bull. All-time high. All-time high on the Nifty, and it's happened after 7 months. The difference is that the components which have taken the markets higher this time, there you go. Will it go to 20,000 in July? And it's
It's a golden bull. Don't miss.